Growing up, Hey Arnold was probably one of my favorite shows of all time, and Arnold seemed like the coolest kid ever. But did you guys ever wonder why we never saw Arnold's parents? What if Arnold's grandparents were actually his real parents? Well, this theory states that Arnold's grandparents are actually his biological parents. And since they had him at an older age, Arnold was born with a condition called, and I'm probably gonna butcher this, hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus is a medical condition that causes a buildup of water in the brain, causing it to swell. And this is apparently what gives Arnold his football-shaped head. Yay. So, genetic mutation or clever character design? Fear not, this conspiracy is totally messed up. In the episode Parents' Day, we clearly see Arnold's parents. We even hear a story about how Arnold was born and exactly why his parents aren't living with him at the moment. They're in South America helping a tribe of mountain people. Also, Nickelodeon planned a sequel movie to Hey Arnold where they go on a field trip to South America and he finds his parents. But unfortunately it was canceled due to a drop in viewers. Plus, in an interview with the unofficial Hey Arnold site, creator Craig Bartlett said that he created the character of Arnold when he was doing claymation for Pee-wee's Playhouse. He cut out a football shape from a big sheet of clay, set the eyes wide apart, gave him big hair, and a tiny hat. So Arnold doesn't have hydrocephalus. It's just a shape Craig cut out of clay. So due to all this hard evidence, I'm gonna have to give the Hey Arnold conspiracy 0.5 Arnold heart lockets out of 5.
Hey everyone, taking a quick break to let you know that Frederator's online store, Stash Right, is holding a $1,000 giveaway for buying all your plushies and t-shirts and whatever from your favorite cartoons. All that you need to enter is an email address. Contest rules apply and there's a link in the description below. Also, all shipping in the United States is totally free, and if you're outside the United States, Stash Right is taking $5 off the shipping costs. So go ahead and check them out now while you can.
Now, some of you may not remember Invader Zim. Created by Yonan Vasquez, this hilariously awesome and incredibly strange show only aired on Nickelodeon for 2 seasons, following the adventures of an alien named Zim who is banished to Earth and is reluctantly joined by a defective robot named Gur. Zim spends the majority of his time on Earth attempting to take over the world, only to be foiled by the well-meaning but very stupid Gur. But what if Gur's stupidity was just a disguise? What if this whole time Gur was actually just playing dumb in order to ruin all of Zim's plans? What if Gur is secretly Zim's greatest enemy? Disguised as an adorable green dog, Gur really could be secretly thwarting all of Zim's plans to take over the human race. Gur is a garbage information retrieval unit. Garbage data is a computer science term used to describe random data thrown at a system to test its stability. If you're not a computer science geek like me, you're probably thinking, what does this all mean? Well, Gur is actually a functioning SIR unit, processing mission-critical information. The big difference is he's processing everything as mission-critical, which is why he gets distracted by stupid and random stuff all the time. Plus, Gur seems to be more competent than Zim in many ways, like blending in with human culture and learning their ways seamlessly. And he actually takes power when he's upgraded and Gur goes crazy and stuff. In this episode, Gur gets upgraded to be less distracted by dumb things, taking out the garbage data that he's always processed. He decides that Zim is a threat to the mission, and he would be much better with him out of the way. Gur even says outright that he doesn't like being Zim's servant. Also, in an unfinished episode called The Trial, Gur single-handedly takes over the Earth while Zim is away. He becomes master of the Earth, conquers the human race, and reconstructs the entire planet to his image in a single day. So despite processing tons and tons of garbage data, Gur is actually actively working against Zim. He takes advantage of looking adorable and acting stupid, so he won't be seen as a threat by Zim, who is already pretty rash and careless as is. But while Gur is in his normal, stupid state, is he really harmless? He lets random people into the house. But could that possibly be because he's trying to expose Zim? He causes major issues for Zim's plots and missions. But could he be foiling his plots intentionally? He uses Zim's lack of perception and judgment, as well as his own perceived stupidity, to keep his true intentions a secret. So could Gur really be Zim's true enemy? Gur, quite possibly the cutest robot dog sidekick to ever grace our televisions. Evil? How could that even be? Well, in the unaired episode The Trial, Gur actually takes over the entire Earth while Zim is away, without revealing his true identity. Don't believe me? Here's an excerpt from the script. Back on Earth, mankind has reconstructed the planet. Everything is in Gur's image. Humans, wearing Gur suits, serve him. Well, nothing in the script exactly reveals that Gur maliciously overruled the Earth while Zim was away. However, in the episode Gur Goes Crazy and stuff, Gur admits some pretty negative feelings towards Zim and the way he treats him. I don't know about you guys, but this theory seems pretty solid to me. Malfunctioning robot or not, Gur is clearly able to form opinions and independent thoughts, even if it is about tacos. And given the relationship between him and Zim, it's not unthinkable that, in his own way, Gur wants to have more control in his existence as Zim's partner. But not all partnerships are mutually beneficial, so we may never know if Gur ever saw his potential fully realized. So, in the meantime, I'm giving the Invader Zim conspiracy 4 cupcakes out of 5. Are you ready, kids? What if your favorite phylum Peripera, who lived in a tropical fruit deep in the ocean, was actually a result of nuclear radiation? I'm here to ruin your childhood with this new conspiracy about your favorite sponge and rectangular pants. Get this. Bikini Bottom is underneath a real live place, an atoll called Bikini Atoll, part of the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean. In 1946, the US government detonated a couple of atomic bombs in Bikini Atoll as a part of Operation Crossroads, one of which was set off underwater. The radiation then affected these once normal creatures and their environments, making it possible for a crab to open a restaurant, or a squid to play clarinet, or a sea sponge to wear pants and a tie. So could this really be about our friends of Bikini Bottom? Well, as it turns out, this is all very true. Bikini Atoll is a real place, and these nuclear detonations really happened. And not only that, but all of this was actually confirmed in the pilot script of Spongebob Squarepants. So on the plausibility meter, I guess I have to give the Spongebob conspiracy a 5 out of 5. Disclaimer, if you would like your childhood to remain somewhat unruined, I suggest turning off this video now. Brace yourselves, this conspiracy is a depressing one. We all remember Rugrats, right? The brightly colored cartoon about talking babies. Well, what if all the babies were just a figment of Angelica's imagination and she was suffering from schizophrenia? Still here? So for the sake of this conspiracy, all those lovable little babies, yeah, they're all dead. Chucky and his mom died in childbirth, which is why Chaz is a nervous wreck all the time. Tommy was a stillborn, which is why Stu is constantly in the basement making toys for the son he never had. The DeVilles had an abortion. Angelica couldn't figure out whether the baby was going to be a boy or a girl, and instead created the twins. Oh, don't worry, it gets worse. And all grown up, Angelica was a bipolar schizophrenic who became addicted to various narcotics that would let her keep imagining her childhood friends. Angelica's dad remarried, and Angelica's real mom actually died of a heroin overdose. Angelica's schizophrenia is actually a result of just being a crack baby. If this giant dark-ass cloud has any silver lining, it's that Susie was Angelica's only real friend. Susie played along with Angelica's twisted imagination because she knew it made her happy. So could this all really be true? The conspiracy is a good explanation as to why Angelica is the only older kid who can communicate with the babies, except that she's not. Obviously, Susie can talk to the babies too, and some say this is just her playing along with Angelica's imagination. But are we all forgetting Rugrats in Paris, where Chucky learns his first word? So it's implied at the end of the series that Chucky begins to learn to talk. All in all, this conspiracy is depressing as hell, but it's also skipping over some major plot points. So on the plausibility meter, I give the Rugrats conspiracy 2.5 plastic screwdrivers out of 5. Have you guys ever wondered why that Timmy Turner kid from the Fairly OddParents looks so much like Danny Phantom? No? Seriously? Come on, Brizzy, back me up here.
Gladly. Come on, guys. They both have similar hair, thick eyebrows, blue eyes, even their parents look and act similar. Plus, they both like to jump into different dimensions. So we're wondering, is it possible that Timmy Turner grew up to be Danny Phantom?
We all know Timmy Turner has fairy godparents that grant his every wish and take him to and from their home dimension, Fairy World. But sadly, Timmy knows that when he turns 13, he loses his fairy godparents and every single memory that they ever existed. Distraught by the thought of losing his two best friends, Timmy makes a reckless wish before his 13th birthday. He wishes that he, Cosmo, and Wanda know each other when he's older. You know, at the ripe old age of 14 years old. Unfortunately, that wish is against the rules for Timmy. So instead, he wishes to become someone else completely. Someone more interesting, wiser, and cooler. Speaking of someone cooler...
Ah, this is much better. Where was I? Oh, yes, so just before Timmy's 13th birthday, his fairy godparents turn him into Danny Fenton, a 14-year-old living in Amity Park with his ghost-chasing parents and sister Jazz. Due to Timmy wanting to be a totally different person, the world changed around him as well. Fairy World transforms into Ghost Zone, and while he still has his parents, they've transformed into bizarro versions of themselves.
Speaking of different versions, the whole point of Timmy's wish is to keep Cosmo and Wanda in his life. And it works! But the Fairy Council is aware that the rules have been bent, so they make Cosmo and Wanda forget Timmy as well. And as a result, he's not sure who they are now. Could Frostbite the lovable snowman be Cosmo? And where did Jazz come from? Could she be Wanda? Timmy can't be sure, but he does know they're still in his life. Also, check out this comparison of characters. Trixie becomes Paulina, AJ becomes Tucker, Tootie becomes Sam, and Chester becomes Dash. With so much chaos and coincidence, could there be any truth to this theory?
Okay, so this theory is super cool. If it's true, Timmy/Danny is living the coolest possible life ever. Fairy godparents in his childhood, and ghostly superhero in his teens. But let's look a little closer. First of all, both shows were created by the same guy, Butch Hartman, so that explains the similar character design. Secondly, and more damaging, in the Fairly OddParents episode Poltergeeks, Danny Phantom makes a cameo in the background. This could mean that Danny Phantom and Timmy Turner live in the same universe at the same time. If that's the case, how could they possibly be the same person?
That's true. If Danny really does exist, the Fairy Council wouldn't allow wishes that give his life to Timmy. But what if we view the Danny Phantom cameo as a foreshadowing of things to come? Then this conspiracy could work. For example, we've seen on several occasions that Timmy would do anything to keep Cosmo and Wanda, so a reckless wish like this doesn't seem that out of the ordinary. Also, the similar personalities of characters in both shows is pretty conspicuous. For example, in the Fairly OddParents episode Poltergeeks, Timmy's parents become Ghostbusters. Would it really be such a stretch for them to become real ghost hunters in Danny Phantom?
Interesting point, Emily. There are a lot of similarities. But if this is true, why would Timmy's wish also make everyone grow an extra finger? Part of me really wants to believe this theory, but it's a little hard to accept. This whole concept is full of loose coincidences. I'm gonna give this conspiracy a 1.5 floaty crowny things out of 5.
Well, I think this conspiracy is a lot of fun and still holds a lot of ground, so I'm gonna give it 4 box ghosts out of 5. Water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, the 4 nations lived in harmony, and I think you probably know where this is going. I don't know about you guys, but I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. But if you've never seen the show, first of all, get on that, and second of all, here's a little synopsis. In this fictional universe, the world is divided into 4 nations based on the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Some people are given the gift of bending an element, which is sort of like an earthy superpower. Those people are called benders. Every generation, one person is naturally chosen to yield the power of all 4 elements. This person is called the Avatar, and they act as sort of an ambassador between the 4 nations. Well, if you're really set on watching the series and you haven't seen it before, here is your spoiler warning. Right now. This is it. Stop watching the video. Come back at another time. All good now? If you're familiar with the show, you know that before the spin-off series, The Legend of Korra, Aang passed away, which restarted the Avatar cycle. But what if he didn't actually die, and Aang is still alive? This theory states that instead of Aang passing away at an old age, he instead just lost his ability to bend. It proposes that Aang went up against Amon, or somebody like him, and during the battle, his bending was either blocked or taken away completely. And because the Avatar is chosen by a natural cycle that runs through all 4 elemental nations, the cycle just decided to move on to the next viable candidate instead of waiting for him to die. If this was true, this could mean that due to his lack of bending, he felt inadequate to his followers and decided to exile himself, leaving the world to think him dead. So, could Aang really still be out there? As much as I wish Aang was still alive, and I really, really wish he was still alive,
I don't think this conspiracy holds up. Okay, we have to remember that at the end of the first series, Aang learned how to take away another bender's power through something called energy bending. And in Legend of Korra, we learn there's another form of bending severance. But Amon never actually took the bending away. Instead, he used a form of blood bending to sever the bender from their ability to bend. The art of energy bending came long before the Avatar and before the creation of the Four Nations. Before any of this, it was the lion turtles that bent the elemental energy within the humans and themselves. Eventually, when the humans were given the ability to bend the elements, the art of energy bending was almost lost completely, except for the lion turtles. By Avatar Aang's time, only one lion turtle still survived, and that was the last remnant of energy bending. It was this lion turtle that imparted the knowledge of energy bending onto Aang. Therefore, Aang is the only human in his generation, and those past it, that we know of, who can truly take bending away from a bender. So it wouldn't really make sense for Aang to be severed and for the Avatar cycle to start anew if his powers weren't truly taken away by energy bending. The only possible way this theory could pan out is if, when Aang was trying to remove the bending from Yakon, Amon's father, or someone like him, the energy bending backfired and his soul was corrupted. However, not much is really known about energy bending in the Avatar universe, so I can't really make any confirmations here. While I personally doubt that Aang could still be alive, I still think this theory holds a lot of grounds. But I can't really give it a perfect score. So based on all of this evidence, I give the Avatar The Last Airbender conspiracy 3.5 flying bisons out of 5.
Well, dudes and dudettes, for this episode, our writers were on a mission. We're here to find out the answer to this question. Could Tito be the biological father of Reggie and Otto from Rocket Power? So this theory states that the lovable, pudgy Hawaiian man, Tito, is actually the father of Reggie and Otto. When Raimundo was married to his wife Danielle, she actually had an affair with Tito. This could explain why Reggie and Otto always call Raimundo by his first name instead of Dad. Also, this could be why Tito stays and works for Raimundo at his diner for close to nothing, just so he could be close to his kids. Plus, he also shares stories about his family and their traditions with Reggie and Otto. And haven't you noticed that Reggie and Otto's skin is a lot darker than Ray's? So could this conspiracy actually be true? Now before we get into this, do you want to feel super old? Rocket Power turned 15 years old this year. 15! Insane! Okay, well to start figuring out this conspiracy, let's look at the third Rocket Power made-for-TV movie, Island of Menehune. This will explain the skin color. Because Danielle Rocket is originally from Hawaii, it makes sense that she'd have fairly darker skin. So Reggie and Otto just inherited their darker skin from their mother. It has nothing to do with her having an affair with Tito. Also, we never hear the kids call Tito Dad. I think Reggie and Otto are just pretty informal. So I wouldn't really consider that a hard piece of evidence. And on top of all of that, Tito shares his family heritage with everybody. With Twister, with Squid, basically anyone who listens, so I wouldn't consider that evidence either. We can just assume that Tito's just the wise storytelling kind of guy. Sorry dudes and dudettes, but with all of this disappointing evidence, I'm gonna have to give the Rocket Power conspiracy 2 squid helmets out of 5. I've been jealous of Timmy Turner's life for like 15 years. Seriously. Who wouldn't want magical friends that granted your every wish? Cosmo and Wanda were the perfect godparents. They were Timmy's best friends and they always gave him like the coolest stuff in the entire world. But have you ever stopped to realize that without his godparents, Timmy Turner's life would be pretty miserable? If you haven't, don't worry. Cartoon Conspiracy is here again to ruin your childhood for you. So what if fairy godparents and all of fairy world didn't actually exist? And what if Cosmo and Wanda were really just manifestations of the antidepressants Timmy Turner was taking? This theory, originally contrived on Reddit, states that Cosmo and Wanda never existed. Timmy Turner is just a 10-year-old kid suffering from depression and anxiety, and his fairy godparents are really just personifications of his antidepressants. Cosmo being Zoloft, and Wanda being Prozac. The theory begins with the pilot episode of The Fairly OddParents that aired as a part of Oh Yeah Cartoons way back in 1998. In this episode, Timmy meets his horrendous babysitter Vicky for the first time. And with the misery that Vicky inflicts upon Timmy comes his fairy godparents. As a part of the gajillion rules in the rulebook, Timmy's godparents will only be around as long as he needed them, usually when he is feeling sad, upset, or scared. Let's be honest here, Timmy's life is not the greatest. His parents are oblivious and borderline negligent. They constantly leave him alone with the worst babysitter to ever walk the face of the earth. And even his crazy teacher, Mr. Crocker, is constantly out to get him. He's just a kid, and it's believable that he would need some sort of relief from all of this. Just maybe instead of magic, it's prescription drugs. Much like clinical depression and anxiety, which can affect you your entire life, Cosmo and Wanda seem to stay in Timmy's life way past his childhood. Technically, you lose your fairy godparents when you become a grown-up, but Timmy has found a way to bend those rules. You can see this in the live-action adaptations of the Fairly OddParents starring Drake Bell. And in the rulebook, there is actually a Timmy Turner loophole, essentially stating that if you are Timmy Turner and you are over the age of 13 years old, and as long as you don't make any selfish wishes, you can keep your fairy godparents. You can also see this in use in the Season 5 TV special, Timmy's Secret Wish. Using a handheld aging device, Timmy sees that Cosmo and Wanda will be with him well into his 20s, which could be a metaphor for how Timmy continues to struggle with his depression. Other theories speculate that practically all of the fairies Timmy interacts with in the show are metaphors for drugs as well. For example, the overly buff Jordan Von Strangle is a metaphor for steroids, and Wandissimo, Wanda's macho ex-boyfriend, is Viagra. So if the fairies are all metaphors for drugs, what could Mr. Crocker be? You know, Timmy's psycho teacher who is bent on outing Cosmo, Wanda, and all of Fairy World. Is he really Timmy's teacher? Or is it possible that he's actually Timmy's therapist attempting to convince Timmy to drop the drugs? So could Cosmo and Wanda really be Zoloft and Prozac? And could all of Fairy World be a metaphor for drug use? For those of you not currently crying on the floor in the fetal position, reevaluating your favorite childhood TV shows, we're gonna keep moving on. Coming off of these kinds of drugs can be difficult, and I can see why Vicky would give Timmy lasting traumatization. In the Season 6 episode, Wishing Well, Timmy is actually sent to wish rehab for over-wishing Cosmo and Wanda, which could really be a very clear metaphor for drug overdose. Now, there are many different rules about how to lose your fairy godparents. But one in particular actually supports this theory. If a godchild says, "I am happy and I don't need my fairy godparents anymore," they disappear, much like antidepressants. If someone decides they're better off without their drugs, they no longer have to take them. As much as it pains me to say it, this theory could actually make sense. Now, I'm not saying creator Butch Hartman created the show as a commentary on prescription drugs, but the more you look into Fairy World, more connections can be drawn about all kinds of drug use. Aside from Wandissimo being Viagra, cause that doesn't make any sense for a 10-year-old boy. Some speculate that Mark Chang, Timmy's Yugopotamian friend, could be marijuana because of his spaced-out personality and the green smoke that surrounds his ship. The anti-fairies could be harmful drugs like heroin, and the pixies could be placebos due to their inability to perform magic. So I'm definitely not saying this theory is 100% canon, but it really is an interesting way to interpret the show. It's hard to give a solid rating for a theory like this, but if I really had to, I would give the Fairly OddParents conspiracy 3 Philip the Nickels out of 5. Spongebob Squarepants has been on the air for 17 years. It is seriously one of the funniest cartoons to ever exist. SpongeBob has made us laugh and has definitely earned a special place in our hearts. But why is that? The characters, of course. SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, and all of the wacky citizens of Bikini Bottom have made the show what it is. But is it possible that these characters aren't entirely original? Could it be that all of the SpongeBob characters are based on the 7 deadly sins? Before we dive into this theory, let's start at the very beginning. What are the 7 deadly sins. The 7 deadly sins, or vices, come from Western religions, especially Catholicism and Christianity. They are intended to destroy the life or charity within a person because they are sinful things to participate in. Today, the 7 sins are known as pride, greed, sloth, envy, gluttony, wrath, and lust. But how do they relate to SpongeBob and his friends? Well, I will tell you. Sandy cheeks is pride. Pride is defined as the belief that one is essentially better than others. And it often includes excessive admiration of oneself and unjustified boasting. Sandy Cheeks will not let you forget that she's from Texas. And she also constantly belittles SpongeBob and Patrick because they are sea creatures and she is a land mammal. Especially in the season 2 episode Pressure, where Sandy, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, SpongeBob, and Patrick almost kill one another just to prove which one of them is better. So Sandy's pride takes over constantly, to the point where she puts her friends in serious danger just so she can prove a point. The next one is pretty obvious. Mr. Krabs is greed. Mr. Krabs is all about money. He is incredibly cheap and completely obsessed with making money. Patrick is sloth. Sloth can be defined as physical laziness or spiritual laziness. In this case, Patrick Star is both. He is actually an award-winning sloth. In the episode Big Pink Loser, Patrick won an award for doing nothing the longest. Plankton is envy. Envy is extreme jealousy or desire, and Plankton is literally green with it. He is so jealous of Mr. Krabs' success with the Krusty Krab, especially since his restaurant is a total failure. Plankton is constantly trying to sabotage Mr. Krabs and will stop at nothing to do so, just so he can be as successful as him. Up next, Gary is gluttony. This one actually took me by surprise because I thought Patrick would have been gluttony as well. But hear me out. It's a running gag throughout the show that SpongeBob is kind of always thinking about feeding Gary. And in the episode, Have You Seen This Snail?, he actually forgets to feed Gary for 10 days. And Gary runs away. Gluttony tends to refer to an overindulgence, especially when it comes to food. So I guess Gary's total reliance on SpongeBob for food makes him kind of gluttonous? Moving on, we have Squidward as wrath. Wrath is the feeling of rage or uncontrollable feelings of anger and hatred. Squidward is miserable. He hates his life, he hates his job, and most of all, he hates SpongeBob and Patrick.
Shut your half-wit pie holes!
And finally, SpongeBob is lust. In terms of these 7 deadly sins, lust is defined as excessive love for others. And SpongeBob exerts excessive amounts of love from every pore in his body, and he has a lot of them. SpongeBob adores every single fish, crustacean, and creature in Bikini Bottom, even if they don't necessarily love him back. We definitely have a lot to think about here. Could it be true that all the SpongeBob characters are actually inspired by the 7 deadly sins? It's incredibly hard to deny that these characters match the traditional 7 deadly sins almost perfectly. It's definitely an interesting concept. But is it possible that it was actually intentional? Well, yeah, actually. In the season 1 DVD commentary for the episode Plankton, Doug Lawrence, a writer on the show, mentions that each main character of the show is in fact based on the 7 deadly sins, which was a theme that show creator Steven Hellenberg actually wanted for the show. Now, I have a feeling at this point some of you are thinking, how could they incorporate something that sounds as dark as the 7 deadly sins into a kids show? Well, it's not that SpongeBob Squarepants is actually about the 7 deadly sins. It's still about the adorably optimistic sponge and his wacky antics with his best friends in the sea, even if they are the result of radioactivity. So with the creator's confirmation, I have to give this SpongeBob 7 Deadly Sins conspiracy 5 Krabby Patties out of 5. In the comments, let me know what you guys thought of this conspiracy and whether or not you thought it was true the whole time. Also in the comments, leave us suggestions of any theories you'd like us to cover. Subscribe to channel Frederator, and I'll see you guys next week. I'm here today to ask the most important question ever asked in the entire existence of all of humanity. A question so deep and so thought-provoking. It puzzled philosophers and oceanographers for thousands of years. The question, who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Luckily, Nickelodeon has never shied away from answering this age-old question. The answer is Spongebob Squarepants. Our old pal SpongeBob swam his way into millions of hearts way back in 1999. He's gone on so many adventures with his pals Patrick, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, Squidward, and Gary the Snail. These guys have been all over ocean and land together. 2 movies and tons of seasons later, there's still one question that has yet to be answered. And no, it surprisingly has nothing to do with how they lit a campfire underwater, or why SpongeBob looks like a kitchen sponge instead of a sea sponge, or even why Squidward can't seem to improve at playing the clarinet. No, there is a much bigger conspiracy to solve in Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob's nemesis Plankton has been trying to figure it out unsuccessfully for years. The real mystery is, what is really in that Krabby Patty secret formula? Mr. Krabs has been keeping the Krabby Patty secret formula safe for years, and rightfully so, as he runs one of the only popular restaurants in all of Bikini Bottom. If his secret gets out, his nemesis Plankton will quickly use that formula at his rival restaurant, the Chum Bucket, and take over Bikini Bottom by having comparable burgers, I guess. It's Plankton's complete motivation throughout the entire series. And it's the ultimate goal in both SpongeBob movies. So what's really in that Krabby Patty? Well, it's been widely disputed. And whatever it is, the customers seem to love it. There have been tons of fake outs throughout the many seasons of the show. One episode titled Plankton's Army was specifically about Plankton finding the secret formula. It was revealed as follows. 1, a pinch of salt. 2, 3 teaspoons of chopped onions. 3, a cup of love. And 4 pounds of freshly ground plankton. Obviously, this was a joke from Mr. Krabs. As Plankton runs from the restaurant, he reveals that this is just a false recipe planted just for the purpose of pranking Plankton, while the real recipe is hidden safely under his own mattress. So here are a few things we do know about the recipe. The Krabby Patty itself is made out of the frozen hamburger with fresh lettuce, crisp onions, and undersea cheese, pickles, ketchup, mustard, and then the addition of the secret formula. In the Great Patty Caper, it's revealed that some of the ingredients of the secret formula are flour, barnacle shavings, salt, and turmeric. One of the repeated ingredients has been mentioned in several episodes, including Plankton's Army, Growth Spout, Krabby Road, and the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water. That one ingredient, love. Aww. In another episode, Friend or Foe, it's revealed that Plankton and Mr. Krabs actually came up with the recipe together. After they had a falling out, they each took home a portion of the list. Of course, with Mr. Krabs getting the majority of the list, and Plankton only getting one ingredient, chum. It's very likely that Mr. Krabs would have remembered this one ingredient, helping him continue to make the Krabby Patty successful, while all Plankton has to go off is chum. And thus, the Chum Bucket was born. But wait, what is chum anyways? It's actually a common type of fishing bait. Yep, fishing bait. No wonder Krabby Patties are so popular. But actually, it gets a little weird. Chum is actually made out of fish parts, bones, and blood. Yikes. That means that all the residents of Bikini Bottom that eat at the Krusty Krab are actually cannibals. Talk about a Soylent Green situation. So while we may never know the exact recipe of the Krabby Patty, we at least know why all these fish like it so much. Although it'll definitely make me question the next time I go to a fast food joint and they offer a secret sauce on their burger. It's the same reason I don't eat pies in London. But does knowing the secret recipe really matter? At the end of the day, it brings us great enjoyment watching Plankton go to extreme lengths just to get the secret formula. If he puts half that amount of time into actually making his recipe good, maybe he'd actually have some customers. And most importantly, never forget what our old pal Spongebob Squarepants says. Remember, licking a doorknob is illegal on other planets, whatever that means. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments, let me know what you guys thought of this conspiracy. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we are looking for a new host for Cartoon Conspiracy. If you guys are interested, make a YouTube video, post it, and email it to us, and tell us why you would make an excellent host for Cartoon Conspiracy. We are ideally looking for someone in the New York City or LA area, and this is a paid opportunity. No reason not to make a video. Be sure to stay tuned for the next couple weeks for some very special episodes. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next week. Seeing as this is my very last episode as your host for Cartoon Conspiracy, I've decided to cover one of my very favorite animated shows. And what show could that be? Only one that involves pop stars with perfect teeth, evil babysitters, magic, and a whole lot of pink and green. Fairly OddParents actually got its start in 1998 with Frederator's own Oh Yeah cartoons. And since 2001, it has brought a little bit more magic into our lives. with our friend Timmy and his fairy godparents, Cosmo and Wanda. They are always there for him to help him solve his problems and cheer him up, but mostly the three of them just cause total mayhem together. Cosmo and Wanda have been married for thousands of years, and Wanda is definitely the brains of the operation. But it hasn't always been that way. Is it just me, or doesn't it seem like Cosmo has gotten dumber over the years? Could he be secretly hiding his smarts? Or is it possible that all of that magic is killing brain cells? Cosmo and Wanda are the best magical friends a kid could ask for. Together, they can give Timmy anything he wants as long as they work together. But doesn't it seem like Wanda is always the smart one? In practically every episode, Wanda is the voice of reason, having to save Timmy and Cosmo from all sorts of danger. But Wanda is often the one blamed for all of the trouble that Cosmo and Timmy cause. Because, according to Jorgen von Strangle, she takes full responsibility for all of their actions because of Cosmo's dangerous stupidity. Now that doesn't seem fair. I'm no expert here, but isn't the key to every successful relationship sharing responsibility for things? Especially when it comes to destroying all of Fairy World on several occasions. If you're a Fairly OddParents fanatic like me, you might have noticed that Cosmo has taken quite the dive in IQ points since 1998. It definitely seems like in the original Fairly OddParents pilot that aired with Oh Yeah Cartoons, Cosmo actually had more smarts than Wanda. And even in the earlier episodes of the show, Cosmo and Wanda both refer to themselves as two halves of a whole idiot. Now that is the kind of blame sharing we are looking for in a healthy relationship. It seems like Cosmo's brain has been slowly deteriorating over the past 15 years. Because in the season 6 episode Fairly Odd Baby, it's revealed that Cosmo's head is completely empty and is actually just full of jelly.
What kind of jelly? Grape jelly. She knows me so well!
So how could this have happened? Is there some kind of awful side effect to magic that deteriorates brain cells? If so, why doesn't it affect Wanda? Is it possible that Cosmo is just plain dumb in order to avoid the fault of his reckless actions and the wrath of Jorgen von Strangle? I have way too many questions and I have no idea what the answer could be. But I've got one idea where to find them though. And in a cartoon conspiracy first, we are going to go right to the source to find the answers to our questions. So over the past 2 years on Cartoon Conspiracy, we have wildly speculated about what some of these answers are for these crazy cartoon theories, but never have we actually gone to the source. So here I have today creator of Fairly OddParents, Butch Hartman.
Hey Emily, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm great, thanks for having me.
Oh, well thank you for being here because we have some pretty in-depth questions
about
your character Cosmo. You know, the show started off with Cosmo being smarter. I mean, you probably remember in the Oh Yeah cartoons, Cosmo seemed to be about the same level with Wanda, but he's been getting increasingly more stupid.
I think we started off, I wanted Cosmo to be sort of a used car salesman. He was like Mr. Slick Guy. He was sort of like this. I'm a fairy. And but as the show went on, we realized that we really wanted the fairies to be a lot sillier so they would mess up Timmy's wishes. Our lead voice actor, Darren Norris, kept coming in with this silly voice. He kept making his voice higher and higher and higher, and as the voice got higher and higher, he just started sounding a lot stupider. So we were able to write a lot more for that. It really came out of a combo of us wanting the character to be sillier and Darren Norris doing a dumber voice. Now the one who's actually really smart is Anti-Cosmo. Anti-Cosmo, you know he's smart because he's English, and so he already is smarter. Anyone with an English accent is obviously way smarter than we are.
It's true, it's totally true.
Way smarter.
Yeah. Is there anything in magic that would possibly lower your brain cells? Like anything, like lower your IQ? Like, is there like some reckless side effect to magic that...
I think fairies, it's funny, when you look at the fairies, they're all head.
Yeah.
So you think they'd be all brain.
Exactly.
But they're really not. Their heads are what make them float.
Oh,
so
okay.
their heads are just
okay.
full of air, basically.
Yeah.
Full
Physics.
of helium, I think, makes them float.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration behind Cosmo and Wanda, the characters, and their relationship?
When I first came up with the show, I wanted it to be just about Timmy and having a magic friend. And I just created Wanda first. I thought I was a little boy with a fairy godmother, sort of like a boy version of Cinderella, and that's kind of where it started. And then I thought, you know, it'd be a lot more fun, because I knew he had parents. The whole idea was he had parents. They loved him, but didn't pay much attention to him. So I wanted him to have another set of parents. And so I thought I should give Wanda a husband. I'd never seen a fairy godfather before. And that's kind of where Cosmo came from. Initial thing was they just love Timmy. They want to be his best pals and anything he tells them to do. It's just they're not that bright, and they get things wrong. That's sort of like their kryptonite, because if you have a character that's too powerful, it's really hard to write stories for them because they can sort of do anything, they're not limited. So having the limitation of their intelligence really made the stories a lot better.
So since this is the first time we do have the creator here, I felt like I should take this opportunity to ask, Butch, on the plausibility meter, what would you give the "Is Cosmo secretly smart" conspiracy?
Well, let's see, on a scale of 1 to 5, since I think it's pretty obvious Cosmo's actually pretty dumb, I'd say I'd give this in the plausibility meter probably about 1 3/4 crowns on the plausibility meter.
I'm not so sure what you guys in the comments will think. So if you agree or disagree with how Butch Hartman rated his own show, please put it in the comments.
Yes. I have one more thing I want to talk about.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
I have a
Go
brand
for
new
it.
app on the App Store. It's called the Noob Network. You can go on the iPhone store and download this. It's absolutely free. It's got all kinds of cool original cartoons and shows and music and games, and just check it out.
And I know you all have a phone because most of you are probably watching this on your phone.
Exactly. And the teacher just took it away. Sorry, you knew the rules.
Well, now that we're back and we have the answers to our questions, it's time for me to say thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on Cartoon Conspiracy these past 2 years. This is not goodbye forever from me, because I will definitely be back from time to time to help host some episodes. And this definitely isn't the end of Cartoon Conspiracy. And with that being said, we are looking for a new host. If you guys are interested, make a YouTube video, post it, and email it to us and tell us why you would make an excellent host for Cartoon Conspiracy. We are ideally looking for someone in the New York City or LA area, and this is a paid opportunity. Be sure to stay tuned for the next couple episodes of Conspiracy. We're going to have many special guests until we can find the right host for you guys. And as for me, thank you for watching.